Hello and welcome to the Media Leader podcast again. I'm Omar Oakes. Today's interview is with Simon Myciunka, the CEO of Bauer Media Audio UK. Simon was named as D Ford's successor as the CEO in May 2023 and announced shortly thereafter that he was looking to make small changes that will have a big impact. So how's that been going? I sat down with Myciunka at our recent Future of Audio and Entertainment event in London, where we discussed his first year on the job, his vision for the business, and why he believes continued innovation will be key to radio's future success. Bauer has also been through a lot of change. They've recently moved all their audio people, all their DJs, all their commercial people to a much more modern building and a building with more light than its predecessor, the Lantern in London's Euston. You've been to the old Golden Square building. They look completely different, these two sites. We spoke last month as Bauer had just launched a new marketing campaign for Hits Radio, and Bauer has high hopes for Hits, which it sees as a rival-ish to Global's big stations, Capital and Heart. And actually, if you saw our coverage of last week's Radar radio audience figures, the Hits audience has already got a lot bigger because of these rebranding, consolidation that Bauer's done. A lot of local stations are now part of the Hits Radio umbrella. That move hasn't been without controversy, and I asked Myciunka about that too. And also, speaking of Global, Myciunka has also worked there. He's worked for both Global and Bauer. He had some very interesting things to say about his old boss, Stephen Myron, and his incoming successor, Simon Pitts, who's joining Global from STV. So I hope you enjoy. Please let me know what you think of the interview by emailing omar.oakes@uk.adwanted.com. I'm always keen to know what people think. Quite often I figure out what I should have asked all the time after an interview is published. Same thing in my column. I should have written that. I always realise that after publishing. Never mind. I want to know what you think. And also, please check out our Radar coverage, which is the best in the business. No one else covers commercial audio like the Media Leader. I sound like a DJ now, but we'll post links to that in the show notes too. And tune in next week. We've got a special bank holiday episode featuring myself and Nick Manning. We're going to be diving deep into the A&A report into principle-based media. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this report had some tough readings from media agencies that resell media and some strong advice for advertisers who may be unable to see the full picture of how their media budgets are being spent. So we're going to get into all that next week. Can't wait. But for now, I bring you Simon Myciunka, CEO of Bauer Media Audio UK, and started off by asking him about his unconventional route to how he got his job. I hope you enjoy.
I think when I've been asked this question before, I've gone right back to the start of my upbringing, and that was being raised in really modest surroundings, very modest surroundings, by my grandparents who passed away in my mid-teens, and really fortunate that a family, friends took me in. So again, in really modest surroundings as well. So I do that for two reasons. The first thing is I think that I've been really, really fortunate to be provided with lots of opportunities around improving my social mobility. And whilst I'm really cognizant that I've been afforded lots of other privileges, I think it's a really good example of investing in internal talent, but also investing in diversity of thought in leadership roles. I think the other thing is it really helped teach me at an early age resilience, networking, and kind of gratitude as well. So I think even in the darkest times, there's always opportunity, and you absolutely have to invest in your network, but not only that, how you operate within that network as well. And I think the value of invisible PR is something of huge importance.
What do you mean by invisible PR?
I just think that people can put on a persona, people can act the way that they want people to see them, but I think the really important thing is how you act when people aren't watching. And I think that's really, really important to be a good collaborator, but increasingly a really good partner, and that's really important in business. And I think the gratitude thing that I spoke about is just about being grateful for what we've got, because invariably it can always be a lot worse. So that's the first thing that I say. I think if I look at my career, I started out in radio sales, so I've always been a little bit competitive. It lent itself to a sales role and commercial. And to tell you the truth, I only wanted a company car and an ability to get some commission, and to take clients out for lunch as well. That would be quite nice. But I started off at Galaxy Radio in the Northeast, and that was working for Chrysalis, so that was the first acquisition of Global Radio. And as you said, I stayed at Global Radio for 10 years, so I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I was really happy there. Probably a little bit too happy. I probably stayed a little bit longer than I should have for my career, but I went for a role and I didn't get it. And that gave me the motivation to look elsewhere. And that took me to Celador, so I moved down to the south coast. From Newcastle to Southampton, so I couldn't have gone any further and still been on land. And I was there for 2 years. It was the first time that I could truly impact change on a wider level. So it was one of the most rewarding times of my career. But I always talk about my career really kick-starting when I moved to Ireland, and that was to work for Communicore Media. And that was working for a business that was owned and operated by a telecommunications tycoon called Dennis O'Brien. So Communicore and the radio business was his first successful business that he launched in 1989. And the majority of his wealth came from what came after that, which was moving into the telecommunications industry. And he ran a business called Digicel. And even though that turned over $6 million every year, the amount of focus he put on his media business in Ireland of Communicore Media was absolutely extreme. And it meant that he was at every board meeting, and he ran it in a similar way, the same kind of governance, the same kind of impressive board, many of which served on both Digicel and Communicore as well. So it was just really fantastic learning bed, because it meant that that board really challenged you, that provoked you. You could never be complacent, and the one thing that they demanded was that you were always future-facing and you were always looking for growth. And I remember when I started at Communicore, and my first board meeting was 1 week into my role, and it was a really intimidating kind of room with really intimidating people, and I spoke for 10 minutes, and I was asked to sit down because I just waffled. I didn't know what I was speaking about. I got really nervous, probably a little bit like what I'm doing now, but it was a Friday as well, so the board meetings were always on Friday, so I spent the weekend thinking that I was going to get sacked. And then, unfortunately for me, I didn't, and I think I committed to making sure that I'd never be in that situation again. I'd always be incredibly I'd try and be as prepared as I could be, look round corners, really rehearse. And 3 years to the day of that first board meeting, I was sat in the same room with Dennis, interviewing to become the CEO of that business as well. So it was a really great time for me. And then Bauer acquired Communicore Media in 2021. And I think Bauer came in not fully understanding how great a business they got in Ireland, really. And they had a business plan. I was really fortunate that I was allowed to reshape that business plan. I think the 2 years that I spent leading the Irish business under Bauer ownership was probably my job interview for the role that I've been privileged enough to be given in the UK. So,
I mean, was before that role became available, was there an understanding that were you being groomed for this role? Why did you get the role?
I think there's a few things. I mean, I don't know whether I was being groomed for the role. I certainly would have always told people that that would be something that I would hopefully see in my future. And you know, my predecessor, Dee Ford, who was absolutely fantastic, was somebody that worked really closely with the Irish business as well. I think Scottish Radio Holdings, there was kind of a link between Bauer and or EMAP previously and some of the Irish business. So Dee had an understanding of that. As I said, I believe in asking for what you want. So I definitely registered my interest early on. I think if you look at the Irish business and what it achieved, there's a few things that meant that I was a good candidate for the role. I think one thing was that it over-indexed in content creation compared to the rest of the Bauer portfolio, and that was really because in Ireland there's a lot more speech in the broadcast output, and what that does is two things. It means that you have to have a really clear content strategy rather than just music genres, and the second thing is it means that migrates really easily into on-demand environments, so you can really transition into digital audio a lot quicker. Then the second thing is that we launched a really successful digital audio advertising exchange. So that was Audio XI. And that's since been rolled out into several other of the Bauer territories. So Portugal was the first one. It's been in Slovakia now, and we're looking at how that can be rolled out across the portfolio. And then the third thing was really how we transitioned the business from just being a single linear product, radio product, into more of a distributed media business. So the biggest example of this would be Off the Ball, which started off life as a radio product on News Talk, which was a full speech station. It was on in the evening. It was just looking at sport, but it was a kind of, I wouldn't say panel show, but it definitely looked about sports interest and opinion and debate. And we unpacked that. And we did lots of social broadcasts, lots of podcasts, lots of events, and we made it into a really 360 brand. And the most recent thing that we did just before I left is that we put the on-demand content behind a paywall, so that you had a mixture of free content that was going out still on a linear basis, but then you had premium content placed behind a paywall, and then you had some additional complementary content that was going out free on an on-demand basis as well. So I think all of those things gave me a really interesting skill set and experience, which was really, a good fit for a business like Bauer Media Audio UK, which is going through a digital transformation journey.
Yeah.
So
it's quite interesting because you often think, had you worked in London at all before that point?
No.
Yeah, so you often think that to get ahead in your career, if you want that sort of job, then you really got to be in London and make yourself known within the business. It's interesting that you started off in the northeast, spent some time in the south of England, London, and then Ireland. I mean, do you think that makes you, is that unusual, or would you actually think that that's good advice for people to try and have a non-conventional path up?
I think it goes back to how I started there. I think it's a really good example of making sure that you would look at recruitment of talent in a different way. I know if I look around, I know that many of the leaders of media businesses that operate in London probably did come through that traditional route of staying in London. I think there's lots of reasons for that, and there's lots of benefits to it. So the relationships that you need to run a media business can be curated over a longer period of time. I think, to go back to the start, one of the things that I've been really focusing on is trying to build up that network as quickly as possible whilst I'm in London.
How easy has that been? How challenging has that been?
I think access is provided because of the strength and scale of Bauer. I can see Simon Kilby in the audience. He's been very good in trailing around London, introducing me to lots of different clients and partners, so that's been really good. So I think the thing is, it's kind of in an ever increasingly changing world with lots of constraints on people's time, it's really difficult to pack all of that into a 9-month period. So to go back to what I started with, it definitely takes a longer time, which is why I need to definitely lean on the support of people like Simon, other people in the senior leadership team. We've got a fantastic, talented team all the way throughout Bauer. It's not all on me, and that's, nobody understands that more than me. Yeah.
Before we get into what you've done in the first 9 months at Bauer and what you hope to do, I mean, what's changed about the UK market in that time you've been in Ireland? What have you come back to? Has anything been significantly different that you think?
I think there's been more consolidation in the market. If you think when I left, I was leading a business that has since been acquired by Bauer Audio Media UK. So that's a huge thing, really. So you saw Global do lots of that, in kind of 2010, the early teen years, and Bauer have followed a little bit later in that sense. So we've got real mass scale now. I think we definitely stand up from a scale perspective and a reach perspective to our commercial radio competitor more than we had in the past. And there's definitely more and more revenue that's going into digital audio as well. So I don't think it's just particular to the UK. It's happening in every audio market throughout Europe and the world. It's the same trends that happen. It's no different. It's just they happen a little bit sooner in the UK.
Yeah. And briefly on Global, obviously going through big change with Stephen Myron stepping down, going to be replaced by the STV boss, Simon Pitts. Were you surprised by that appointment?
No, I don't know Simon. I've heard very good things about him. I don't know whether I'd be surprised. I think it was always going to be a really interesting decision where they went, because Stephen's such a big personality. He's been a driving force in that renaissance of commercial radio in the UK industry. So I think it was always going to be an interesting appointment. I think, speak about Stephen first, I was always really grateful that he offered me lots of his time to give me bits of career advice. I remember actually he tried to get me to move down to London. At the time, the happy hour in Newcastle restaurants that were $3.99 was a lot more appealing than London prices at that time for me, right? So I stayed in the northeast. But if you look at Global, it's been a really successful business. If you look at the leadership team, it's been pretty solid. The core team's been pretty solid for the last 15, 16 years. People started at a similar age, similar point within their career. They're probably coming to the end of that career a little bit. So I think Global is going to be a really interesting time to see how that transition takes place. As I said, I don't know Simon. I'm all in favour of Simon's being leading media organisations. I've heard great things about him. Claire Enders actually introduced me to him over email recently, and I'm planning on going up to Scotland to visit some of our brands in the next few months. So, we're hoping to get some time in the diary. It looks as though he's had some really great success around digital transformation, particularly in the studios business of that STV organisation. So I think that will stand him in really good stead for what's ahead of him at Global.
Yeah, I know he was highly regarded at ITV, STV. So let's go on to key decisions that you've made in the 9 months, nearly a year that you've been in charge of UK operation of Bauer. What are the key decisions? What are the key challenges, and how have you tried to address them?
Well, I think there's probably a couple of key learnings and then probably a couple of key decisions. So I think the key learnings probably start with the comparison of how I transitioned from being a commercial director in Ireland to being a CEO in the same business to how I've approached this role. So I think the first thing was when I became the CEO of the Irish business, I remember I completely lost the run of myself. I focused on everything that I didn't know, and I forgot everything that I did. And that was because I was learning a role at the same time that I was constantly doubting whether I was capable of doing or not. So I think the big takeaway is that it's a lot easier being comfortable and knowing a role and learning a business than the other way around. The other learning is, I kind of touched on it before, there's some fantastically talented people and individuals in the business. And I think whenever you've had a business that's been there's been a static leadership team in Bauer Media Audio UK for quite some time. You don't always get the progression of ideas and people that come. So I think there's two things that we need to do with that, which is, the first thing is just allow people to have more empowerment. So allow people the autonomy to make more decisions and to play a bigger role in defining what our strategy is moving forward. And the second thing is just aligning people, because the other thing is we've been born out of acquisition. We've got lots of diverse goals and objectives for a big portfolio. We need to be really clear about what it is everybody's trying to do. It's really, really simple. We're trying to create more and more digital products that are complementary to our broadcast brands. We need to balance investment between those two to make sure that our portfolio has the biggest chance of success. So I think those have been the big learnings.
Is that, can I interpret that you think you've still got too many brands, you've cobbled together stuff over the years, and you just need to simplify, get rid of brands?
I think, as you've seen, we'll probably touch on it with what happened yesterday with the Hits rebrand. I think in a digital environment, it's never more important for brands to be able to cut through, and that means a few things. It means having a really clear proposition, making sure that there's world-class talent that leads those brands, and you have to be clear and consistent in how you market them. And a variety of brands doesn't really help with that. So we need to be a little bit more focused, but we've still got some fantastic core brands, and we need them, and we're going to continue to invest in them. So yeah, I don't know about that. I think we're heading in the right direction with it.
Yeah, I think we actually, can we play the Hits, have we got the video for that? Oh, we do? Can we hear it? So you launched this ad campaign yesterday to market Hits Radio with your presenters there. It's interesting. So why rebrand? So you had a whole host of local stations across England. You've rebranded them to Hits Radio. Free Radio Birmingham, Free Radio Coventry and Warwickshire, Hallam FM, Links FM, Metro Radio, Pulse One. So why have you decided to do that? It's my understanding that those weren't so much local anywhere. They were actually being broadcast from Manchester. They weren't really being broadcast from the places that you maybe thought you were if you were a local listener. So they weren't, was it fair to say they weren't really local apart from the branding?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, each territory has a market-leading breakfast show, so there's still content that's coming locally from those radio stations and brands. And then that's backed up by local news reporting as well, or regional news reporting, to make sure that people have really relevant stories. You know, when in this last 9 months, I've gone around and spoken to lots of people within our organisation, and one of the things that came up was a lack of marketing and clear marketing power. And when you've got that majority of that many brands, it's just not cost efficient to be able to advertise or market in the way that we needed to. And Hits Radio is probably our biggest but most underdeveloped brand. It's got a strong focus on under 40s. We've invested a lot recently in new programming, and we're going to invest a lot more in marketing. So I think if you look back over the last, as I have over the last 15 years, we've never spent as much as what we're planning to spend on a single brand as we are with Hits Radio. And you know, we had lots of success with Greatest Hits, and we didn't have the same marketing campaign there. And I think before Christmas, we did a lot of testing to make sure that the proposition and the product was in the right space. We were really, really pleased with what came back. And that was that we had a really different product from what was currently in the market.
Yeah, I want to push you on that because, I mean, where do you see it in the market? What is it offering? I mean, on the global side, it seems you've got Heart, Capital. I see Hits Radio as being a competitor for that. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think
How is it going to be distinct from those brands which are already big audiences?
Well, I think it sits perfectly in the middle, and I think there's a few reasons. I think the first thing is music proposition. So the music proposition is all about uplifting hits with the greatest throwback. So it's a broader proposition than any of those singular brands that you've mentioned. I think the second thing is in the network talent that we've got. So the thing that came back in that testing was that they are real, engaging, authentic, and we're talking about people like Sam Thompson, Gemma Atkinson, Fleur East. And I think that may be a little bit different from some of the other brands which are a bit more glossy, a bit more showbiz, so to speak. And if you look at the ad campaign that we've just shown there, it's such a shame that you can't hear it, but I think the ad campaign demonstrates that. So it tries to show our presenters being real, authentic, engaging, operating within our listeners' lives. And then the music that backs that up is a mixture of Rihanna and Pink, and it just shows the breadth of the offering. So I think we're all really, really excited about what we can do with this brand. And I think going back to that market-leading breakfast shows as well, we're really confident that we can get a market-leading commercial radio station in this space.
Yeah, you could of course watch the ad on the Media Leader YouTube, just search for it, just saying. It's really interesting you say that actually, because you talk about the talent being really important to the strength of those brands. And looking at sister network Greatest Hits, you had big success last year when you got Ken Bruce, formerly of the BBC, very popular quiz show that he runs. You've taken that audience to Bauer. Is that the way that it's going to continue to go, that the DJs, the presenters, the talent is going to be even more important, maybe even eclipsing these brands going forward?
Yeah, I think, look, talent's always going to be incredibly important, whether we're speaking about talent behind the mic and people that are helping us produce the shows, or whether they're helping us sell it, or we're talking about the presenters. I think the fact that there's been that disintermediation by tech platforms means that people can get directly to talent without the need for brands in between them. So I think it's a really interesting ecosystem now. But you know, for people like Ken Bruce, that has such a relationship with his audience, and they're used to experiencing that in a very specific way, I think it's really incredibly important. I think
you're looking to poach more people. Who do you poach? Who would your dream BBC or Global or maybe from another part of media? Who's your dream?
Who would the dream be? That's a really good question. I don't know whether I should ask it, otherwise I get answer that, or I'll get lots of talent agents on my back. I think we'll always.
Or maybe let's make it easy for you. What sort of profile of person? Because I wonder if you see that the nature of talent will change going forward as there's more adoption of digital audio, addressable audio. We've not talked about podcasts, for example.
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear you talk about Ireland and how they have, for whatever reason, more speech radio. Global has had big success with LBC in recent years with speech. Do you see that as becoming more important to Bauer's future, talk radio, for want of a better word?
I definitely see a future where speech plays more of a role in our portfolio. So I think, just to answer the talent thing, I think you're right. I think it's people that we're not really looking for people just to say this is that was in a music environment anymore. We're looking for a bit more personality. We're certainly looking for people to engage an audience more than was probably some of the brands allowed presenters to do in the past.
Is that part of the innovation strategy in order to enable your talent to do that?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah, definitely. And I think speech is a couple of, we look at speech in a couple of ways, really. The first is, how can we get more speech out of our broadcast products? So, you mentioned Ken Bruce there, Simon Mayo as well. There's two properties in each of those shows, whether it be Confessions or whether it be Popmaster, that actually transition into an on-demand environment really, really well. So how can we get more of that? So
by on-demand, are you talking about subscription, paywalls?
No, I'm talking about just how people consume that content. So whether you listen to it live or you're listening to either catch-up or a podcasted version of that content, it's really, really important for us, because as we all know, that consumption habits are massively changing, and so is the future of how revenue flows into the market as well. So that's really, really important for us. How can we get more out of the broadcast products? The second thing is podcasts as well. So it's incredibly important for us to increase and certainly keep up and increase our investment in this space. I think it's the fastest growing area of audio, both from revenue and listening, so we absolutely have to be there. The second thing is it allows you to build complementary audiences to your broadcast platforms. It means that you can scout and trial talent that you previously wouldn't have been able to do. So that, and the other thing that's really interesting about it is it allows you to develop out richer contextual content verticals on your owned and operated platforms. And when you're looking to offer advertisers great access to first-party data, that's incredibly important. Now, it's a real challenge to make the economics of podcasting work. So it just means that we have to be really focused and strategic in how we go about investment in that, but it's definitely part of our future moving forward.
Yeah, and what about, so last year you launched, you announced you were developing Rayo. Is that fair to interpret that as your version of DAX, Global's digital audio exchange? And what's the future for, you've got currently apps like Absolute app, and the inventory that goes on that, is Rayo ultimately going to replace all of that? What's the path forward for your digital audio, addressable audio?
Yeah, I mean, so it would be, if we were comparing it to a global product, it'd be more similar to Global Player or BBC Sounds. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge area of investment for us in developing a product that's going to be really future-proof moving forward, and that requires lots of investment, lots of skills, and lots of new capabilities. We'll be launching that in June, and it's about making sure that we can bring together all of our brands under one experience, much the same as what we've done in a physical sense with the Lantern building. But what we're always looking to do is give our listeners a better, more personalized experience, which will make sure that, which hopefully mean that they listen for longer. And then we're trying to increase the quality of the data that we capture, and we think that Rayo will definitely give us that answer. And it's not just on app, it's also across web as well. And then from if we're comparing DAX, which is digital audio, and how you then take that inventory and monetize it, we've got a product in Octave that's absolutely market leading. When you look at it, it's kind of premium inventory from 2 premium publishers. It's a JV between Bauer Media Audio UK and News UK. And the first party data set between the 2 audio businesses, but more importantly, the publishing business on the Bauer side and the print business and the digital assets that News have got on their print side, means that you've got this fantastic product. We've started...
Yeah, does that mean, it's interesting, that's important you mentioned the joint venture with News UK Octave, because when you launch Rayo, does that have to be done in concert, in consultation with them?
No.
Or, I mean, what's the future for that relationship when you're doing that?
So I think you've got a separation. So one's all about the inventory. How do we get more listening? How do we get more ad units? And the second one's about how do we monetize that? And I think, I'll speak quite openly about the fact that in radio, we don't get our fair share of time spent with the media. And I think that's true of digital audio as well. And I think the other thing is that in Bauer, we probably don't get our fair share of revenue that's in the industry, in the market, coming to Bauer rather than our commercial competitors. The same is true in the digital audio space as well. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is to do with the fact that our competitors have been first to market in a lot of areas. And the second thing is, I think we're just not out there enough defining what it is and explaining to people what we do and what we do brilliantly. So, we definitely, we don't need to consult in terms of a listening perspective with our partners at News, but collectively we're trying to drive more revenue into that digital audio space. And I think when you look at the depreciation of cookies that's happening, and brands can't switch off or pause their advertising just because they don't have access to data anymore. And they're going to have to look for digital environments that don't have as big an over-reliance on third-party cookies for targeting and measurement. And digital audio is a perfect home for that. It's grown in listening in the last few years. It's grown in ad inventory in the last few years. You've got much more diversity of content than ever before. And then all of the publishers have really increased their first-party data capabilities. So I think those brands and advertisers that take that opportunity will really be ahead of the game in terms of satisfying their campaign strategies, but also their privacy-safe strategies as well.
And of course, before we wrap up, I suspect we'll hear a lot about the BBC today. Launching audio ads, they say, in the UK on audio. How surprised were you when the news came out about that? And what do you think about the prospect of the BBC doing that?
I think it's been spoken about for a long time, so I don't know if I was surprised. And the interesting thing is in Ireland, the state broadcaster is ad funded, but there's lots of guardrails around that. I think it could have really big consequences for Adland. And if you look at the BBC, it's funded by £3.8 billion worth of license fee payer money. And unlike TV, the BBC are really dominant in the audio space. So I think it could have huge consequences for commercial broadcasters in the UK. I think that's further compounded by the fact that the BBC also announced that they were going to launch some new radio stations on BBC Sounds and on DAB as well. And we have issue with the fact that they aren't distinctive, and in fact we think that they copy lots of services that are already available from Global, from Bauer, and from Boom Radio, for example. So we would much prefer them to revisit those plans and look to provide distinctiveness. And I think when the last BBC charter was formed, the future-facing digital-first strategy wasn't in existence, right? And I think as we approach the next BBC charter, we absolutely should look at how it's funded and indeed what the wider BBC mandate is, because it's an incredibly important institution. But I think the risk is that the future-facing digital-first strategy gains a lot of momentum without appropriate regulation, and that's really, really damaging, not just for the BBC, but also for the creative industries as well. And I know that Matt Payton from Radio Centre is doing a session this afternoon on why an ad-funded BBC is bad for everybody. So I'd recommend or urge anybody to go and view that.
Give a big hand for Simon Myciunka of Bauer Media.
Thanks again for listening to the Media Leader podcast. If you like what you hear, guess what? You can read our stuff at our website, themedialeader.co.uk, where you can sign up to our daily newsletter in the UK of analysis, opinion and commentary about what's going on in media and advertising. You can also find us on YouTube. We are posting video interviews and clips from our live events. And don't forget to check out our LinkedIn page, which is often a very interesting way to see what people in the industry are saying about our articles and the issues we write about. Anyway, get back to work. Catch you next time. Bye bye.